Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman. I am the streamer for this stream, and we work on a Django application. And tonight we're going to continue on the Django app that I'm building, and we're working on the onboarding flow of the app, basically the first experience when you sign up for the application. I've got a bunch of steps in place here, and we've got one step that we did last week, which was building out the first form for the first piece of data that is needed for this flow. And we're going to move on to the next one. And as this process starts to go on, we will see how these pieces interconnect and how the previous stages will be required for later stages. And so there's some interdependency that needs to be worked out. Hey, Azraflow, welcome. And we'll have to walk through all of those aspects of this. So it'll be interesting to see everything that needs to come together to finally connect all the parts. So let's see, do we have anything that we can start with today? Maybe like a opening question to think about. Well, I guess I should first note that if you want to keep up with me, there are ways that I mentioned. There's a Discord that's available. There's a link below in the stream section here that if you want to ask questions that are not a good fit for something short form like Twitter, but you still have questions about, that's open. I check it not every day, but I'll be happy to answer your questions when I get in there. This content also does get posted to YouTube after the recording's over, so if you miss anything or have to jump off, you can catch it there later. So you can search for my name, Matt Lehman, on YouTube and find the channel and find the playlist of all of the stream episodes that we're doing. Finally, I have, I guess I've got a couple more things. There's a website where you can find out more about me, where I write about Django and Python rather extensively. I am on Twitter as MB Lehman, and I have a Patreon page. So if you are enjoying the content and you want to throw a few dollars my way, you can support me there. I do appreciate my current patrons, Patrick, Mark, and Rob. Thank you for supporting me and helping me stay motivated to continue to do this kind of stuff. So question that I might have for the day is, I guess I didn't really think about this in advance. So what is a good question that we can break the ice with? How about this one? Just very casual. What is your favorite Django package? Django ecosystem is pretty large, and there's a lot of good stuff out there, and exposure to those things is pretty cool. So if you have a favorite package and you want to drop it in the chat, happy to chat about it, just to see what people think about stuff. Otherwise, we'll just dig into this first part of onboarding here. So last time I finished off this next page in the flow, this start your school year. And the school year is the first piece of data that's needed by the application because as I've outlined in the models, which I can bring up again as a reminder, I've got a models diagram that shows all of the models that are part of this onboarding flow. When a new account is created, there is a school model that is auto-created with that account. So the Django makes a user record and a school record, but it really becomes up to the actual user to flesh out the rest of their homeschool, because that's what I'm building. It's a homeschool application. So last time we made a school year model with a form, and we needed the start date and the end date. The only other piece that was required is the school itself, which we embedded in a hidden field in the form. Today, we're going to move on to this grade level form. But I should make some notes about changes that I made after the stream that I did not cover during the stream. So let's take a look at those real quick before we dive into the next issue. The biggest change was I had talked about needing to do some validation for the school itself. Because of the way I've modeled the system, I don't want people to be able to create content on other people's stuff. So if someone signs up and they want to create a school year, they shouldn't be able to post to a Django endpoint that's available and just happen to create a school year on somebody else's school. So I needed to add some validation to guard against that case. It's not likely that someone would do it because it's not exposed in the form user interface. but I still wanted that check as a safety guarantee. And the version that I had in the last stream didn't quite cover it. I think, what did I have here? I used, rather than using a form class, I was using the model attribute and the fields attribute at the create view level. And what that was doing, oops, sorry, fields. What that was doing is relying on the create view class level, class-based view, this create view line here. That was relying on that view to automatically generate a form for us based off of the model and the fields that I said I cared about. The challenge with that strategy is it didn't give us a place where we could override the clean method, which is what's down here, so that we could do the proper validation checking to give us the safety guarantees. So instead, what I did after the stream was I removed these two things. I made a form class that I could plug into the create view instead to essentially hint to the create view, hey, we can override this with my form instead of you auto-generating a form. And by doing that, you can see that the model and the fields attributes moved into the form itself. It's still using a Django model form. So Django is still doing a lot of work for us in doing validation of the individual fields. But when it came to the custom cleaning and the custom validation that I needed to do for this form, I could do that right here. I also added the bit of validation for checking that the start and end date were in the right sequence, because it will really muck up the data model if I have those out of place. So that's what this additional clean method was doing. And I guess I should note, if you're not super familiar with Django and how form validation works, you can have a clean method, and you can do individual cleaning. So you can have a clean of the start date, for instance, and take action specifically on that field as it comes in. So there is it's well documented. I think I'm not including all the pieces. I think there might be the value. I'm not actually positive off the top of my head right now, but you can clean individual fields, and that's useful for when you have validation checks to perform only against certain parts. And I suppose I could have actually done that with the school, but I didn't take that tact. Instead, the overall clean method is for the case when you want to have fields that need to interact with each other and check other attributes. So that is a perfect example in this case. Like, we can't have a clean start date that will also use the end date, for instance, because I think at the time where these clean methods for the fields run, they don't have access to the other field methods. So if you need to do some extra checking, then make sure you do that in a clean method. So anyway, that's the context of what I made, of the changes I made that were outside of the stream, and just to get you up to speed with that. You'll also notice one other thing that is worth highlighting is the validation itself that I did in this clean method required me to access the user. And I needed the user because I needed to find the school for the user and compare, is the school that's coming from the clean data equivalent to the school that the user has access to. And in order to do that, I had to override the init of the form and get the user attribute. And in order to make that attribute available to the form, I had to override get form keyword args. So that's a lot of stuff if you're new to Django. So just as a reminder, there is a site called Classy Class-Based Views. It's got a kind of weird URL, ccbv.co.uk. But if you can remember Classy Class-Based Views, it'll get you a lot of stuff. And from here, you can click on some of the class-based views and see all of the methods and attributes that are available for you to override. I don't recall if it doesn't have the documentation itself. You'd have to look that up from the Django part, but gives you the pieces, because the way these class-based views work, they they're a composition of a lot of mix-ins and quite a bit of inheritance. You can see all of the mix-ins that are used in this example. I'm trying to think if any of them are actually direct inheritance. It might be all mix-ins, but that's challenging when a create view is really nothing but a composition of, what is that? Eight different mix-ins. That's a lot to hold in your head. When each of those mix-ins is doing something in a very subtle, sometimes subtle way, and additionally, when those mix-ins actually expect other methods to exist and interact, all of it hangs together nicely in the end, but it does lead to a confusing experience at the start, I should say. So that's what's going on with Create View. And let me make sure I got, I'm at the state that I was at. So no more changes are made here. So I think we're ready to jump into our next view in the chain. And I'm just debating between, do we jump ahead to the next view, which would be very similar to what we did on the last stream, or do we make a little bit of backtracking connection? I'm kind of leaning towards that first, just to add some variety. And what do I mean by backtracking? Let's look at the milestone, which has all of these issues. So one of the prerequisites to completing this next step of creating a grade level, which right now is just an empty form, like there's really nothing in it. It's a copy of the original template, so we haven't filled it out yet. But in order to even get to this form, I need to have a school year, because in the model, you can see that there is a foreign key to a school year. So if a user is just kind of clicking around and they want to jump ahead to one of these other views, then what they can do is click it, but they're not going to be able to actually complete that step. So what I need to do in each of these is recognize that there's a chain. So the grade level view will first need to check of, do you have a school year available? And if you don't, it needs to be able to display that and say, hey, you actually don't have this chunk of data yet. Go back to this other view. I've thought about ways that we can polish this experience. For instance, like if we click this last step requires a model created here, a model created here, a model created here before you can get to this. The smartest version of onboarding would be, if you click this, I could say, no, actually, you haven't even clicked the create school year step, and send them all the way back. The other version of it could be a more narrowly scoped version of that checking, where it only looks to see, do you have a course, which is the immediate thing that it needs, and send it back. The downside of that approach is, let's say somebody clicked way ahead to the end and it said, oh, you don't have a course yet, and they click that button, and they get to the course page and it says, oh, you don't have grade level yet. So you can see how it would just kind of kick people back step by step by step. And I don't think that's the optimal experience, but I think it is an easier experience to create. And I don't want to like overdo this onboarding. So my strategy, rather than saying go from here all the way to here, is just to say go to the previous step if you don't have it. That way it should simplify what each step has to check for. It only has to check for one thing, and kick them back one step, rather than have to consider, do you go back one step or do you go back 2 steps? Because, okay, another scenario, let's say the person clicks this, but they have already created the school year. So now, instead of sending them back all the way to the start, it would really be the appropriate thing to send them from this step to this step. So I think you can kind of see how that it's doable, but it's a bit more work perhaps. So the strategy I'm going to take is we're going to, in this create a grade level page, this start grade level view, we're going to check for the existence of any school year for that user. And if any school year exists, then it will proceed and it will show the form. And if it doesn't have it, it will kick them back. There is another attribute as well. So right now, you could come to this page and you could create a school year and go to the next step in the process, but then come back. And if we don't have guards here that says you already have a school year, then they could create a second school year. And that's just going to be that's going to be problematic because it will create more data than we want. Yes, the home open source, that repository is exactly up to date. And well, let me make sure I'm being honest there. I'm pretty sure I pushed it up. Yep. So that repository has every bit of code that I'm looking at tonight, except of course for the changes that I make this evening. But I try and keep that up to date. So if you want to check it out and pull that down, you're welcome to give it a try. Do I accept pull requests? I don't know. The person that I think the answer would be yes if you found something appropriate, but I don't know that I would have a lot of stuff that's really obvious to do because the requirements for this project are coming from my wife who's in the next room chatting with some of her girlfriends. So I wouldn't stop you, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, just bug fixes and roadmap stuff. Sure, why not? I'd be happy to review a pull request, especially if you want to get some experience and all that stuff with apps. Okie doke. Let's get back to the next step. So what do we do? We can do the step where we check the grade level that there is an existing school year. And we can also do the stuff that checks that the school year has only one school year and it doesn't allow making two. I think for the sake of like consistency and finishing off a step rather than like getting ahead of ourselves, let's start with that check that says, do you already have a school year? And I think what that will do also is allow us to see the bit of context we might want to add and just give us a view of that. So the first thing that we need to do is think about, what does this even mean? What is the impact of this going to be? So let's bring up the template that goes with this. And you can see that the template is called Start School Year. So let's bring up that file. I can type. And here is our school year. So I think what I want to do is have something along these lines. So I think what I want is to have an if check that says if there's a school year, then that's the case where somebody has already created one and they don't need to do this again. And so in that context, we're going to put out some message saying like, hey, you're actually done with this step. Proceed to the next step. And I'll kick them over to the grade level page. And then if they haven't done that, then we want to display the form that we displayed previously. So let's take all of this code that we have for the form and put it into this else area. Hopefully that makes sense to you all. So all that stuff's in there, and this should, if I save this, I'm going to save this and refresh this page, nothing should happen yet. It should appear exactly the same. And that's because if we look at the template and we look at the context, there's no school year in here. so that's expected. This is the default starting behavior. So now we have to figure out, okay, how do we add the school year? And we're going to do that by adding context to the view. So let's go back over to the view file, and we will look at this view. And the first thing I want to do, just to be safe and get things right, is I believe the function is called getContextData, and it's going to take self as the first parameter, argument, I guess, and keyword args as the second. And we have to return the super, but we're going to modify this. So I'm going to put it in a variable locally, and we're going to call super getContextData and pass in those same keyword arguments. Okay, and then return that context. Okay, so we haven't changed anything yet. I mean, we added this method, but it's basically just doing what it would have done. And if we did things right, then it should be there. Okay, and just fake it for a moment, because we're actually not going to do the query yet. I'm going to put something in for the context, that school year variable that we said we're going to check for. We'll say school year, and we'll just fill it in with this literal string of something. And that should be enough to trigger that if check, so that it will go and empty out that form. Yep. So hopefully that was clear on what happened, but just in case it's not, we've got the template, we've got context now, and in our context is a school year variable that has a value of something. So when we look at our template, it will evaluate to true here, because a string with some value is truthy. So I guess more appropriate would have been to say true, but whatever. And so now it's coming into this path here. Hello world. Okay, refresh. There's hello world. So the thing we need to fill in now is the copy that should go here, and a button that, it's not even a button. It's a hyperlink that will send them to the next step. I'm going to style it like a button, but it'll be a hyperlink. And to do that, we don't need a literal button, but we will take the button text that's below here, because it has the right classes that I want to have a shared style. And we'll change it to an anchor, like so. And we'll take off the type submit, because that's not necessary. And change the text to be what? Will be create. So the next step is supposed to be creating your grade level. That's what we're moving on to. So that's where we're going to send them. And we also need to have an href equal to something. And we're going to use the URL tag. So URL, and that name of that URL path is start grade level. We end the tag, give it a space. So I think if we did that right, there should be a button here. Whoops. Nope, not start. I didn't do that right. It's coming from core, and it's called start grade level, like that. Okay. So there's our button. Clearly our copy needs some space. I think our grade level, this button could use some work. Don't like it yet. So actually, let's go back. So at the very beginning, when I first started this onboarding process, I chose to use this green button as a way to visually get attention. And partly because there's this big blue bar, and it just seemed like the right thing to do to change to the next step. So when we have this scenario where the form is already done, I think I want to change the style of this link to be that green, because I think it will kind of convey the same sense of, hey, this step is done, you've succeeded. So let's try that. Let's do, well, what's the other styling got? We've got, what color green is it? Green 700 and green 500. Okay, so it's same numbers from Tailwind as the other. Green and green. And I think, can we do text center on here, or do we have to wrap it in a div? I can never quite remember. Try that, see what it does. Okay, it didn't help the button, so it must be at the container level above it. So we'll do text center on a div that surrounds it. And we'll take the anchor tag and put it in here. And there we go. So now it's centered in this view. We'll give some copy that says something pleasant. So we can say, you created your school year. The next step is to create a grade level for your students. I don't know if we keep that singular or plural, I'm not sure. I don't know if the average homeschool user will have more than one or not. So I'll keep it plural because I think they might, but we'll see. And then we'll give it some bottom padding, and it looks like the padding that I was using earlier was, what was it, 4 or 6? Although I see a 2 in there as well. It's definitely not 5. Okay. That feels, bleh. I don't dig it. I think I don't like it because it lines up with this edge and just doesn't feel right to me. And it just overall feels a little claustrophobic. Like all of this stuff is shoved up into this top area. So we can change that. We've got the tools to do that. And we might even have the right tools to do that already. Let's think about that. So we're already using a flex container, and it's a flex row, and it's got, well, the width full part doesn't really matter. But we can, there's one of the options we can do that will, I guess from your perspective, drop the content so that everything lines up horizontally. Now, I'm not sure if I will like the impact of that on the form, because I kind of like having the form hang towards the top and then flow down. That seemed appropriate. And as a reminder, you can look at that just by adding not in the template. So here, it feels right. Like it's at the top, and you can see I must have already thought about that left padding. But I'm not convinced that when we have just like a sentence or two, if it makes sense to hang there. So before we do that though, let's take this off, and looks like I have a margin left 10 to get that stuff bumped in some. So that feels better. The other thing I'm observing now is that because this text is here, you can see there's a certain amount of space above it. Come on. Inspect this element. then, okay, so it's the padding from the element above that's pushing it down by 8. So that tells me that the space here is an MB, or is an 8. Tailwind uses a relative numbering syntax. So it's 8, which is like 2 relative EM, I think. Let's check. Let's look up margin. And MB8, yep, I got it. MB8 is 2 relative EM units. And if you can go look up what that means in CSS. I don't fully remember. I think it's like relative to the size of the font that you have or something. CSS, it loses me sometimes because sometimes it's pixels, sometimes it's other unit points. Like, I don't know. But at any rate, we've got 8 above for sure. So maybe we should put 8 below and see what that'll do to the look. That would at least make the spacing above and below be uniform. And is that okay? Yeah, this is probably okay. Like, I don't need to over-engineer this page. This is a page that is basically covering an edge case for what happens when somebody comes back to a flow. That's probably not realistic. So we've got that, and it does move advanced to the grid level, so I feel like that's right. So the next thing to do with it is, why did that, I hit the back button and it had the spacing wrong. It must be the browser caching the page somehow, weird. So the next thing I want to do is add that context data and write a test to prove that this works the way that we want it to. So this part's done. I basically view the template part of this done. And we're ready to move on to the testing. And then we'll do like a final pass to make sure that it is in fact displaying the right thing. I'm not really doing big end-to-end integration tests in this project. That's not really my speed. I don't have enough time to do that or desire. So we're not going to. So we'll check it once and verify that the unit tests are there, and I think that'll be enough. So let's close this template and open the views file. So really, I'll comment this out because I don't want the what am I trying to say? I don't want the context to be there yet for the test. I want the test to fail. But essentially, the test that we're looking for is to query the user's whatever school years the user might have. And I will show what that looks like in a second. So let's open up the core test file for the test views. We'll go to the test case, which we're already at. So we're going to put it on, we've got a view that just checks OK. We have another one that checks for a valid submission, and then 2 that are checking for validation errors. And then this is a exceptional case that comes after the fact, so I think it makes sense logically to put the test here. And we'll say test has school year, because that's sort of the convention that I use to indicate to myself that something is in the context of has and then that variable name. That's not anybody else's convention, that's purely mine. But I'm trying to be consistent with myself. So we want to do this. We want to say that there's going to be a user. We're going to do a get on the page instead of a post. And so that we're going to take out the data. We don't need that. In a moment, I'm going to add a school year to that user. In fact, I can probably do that right now. We'll say we need the school year factory. and we're going to create one with the school. It's going to be equal to the user school attribute. So the school, this is a property that I have defined on the user class, which does a lookup on the school. And if you remember, which you may not, the school is auto-created whenever a user is created. So there should be a school, and this attaches a school year to it. And we need to validate that the school year is in the context, so we're actually going to need this instance to do the actual checking. So we'll say response. I don't think we even need the response because we already have a test that checks for 200, so I'm not interested in that. And we're going to use assert. Is it assert context? Yeah. So assert context, school year, and school year. So this test should fail because right now we have something and it's not a school year object. So that's just wrong, which tells me that I didn't actually save this thing. So now I've saved it. Now let's run the same test again, and now it won't be there at all. It's a key error. Okay, so it's time to put the school year into the context. So the way that we're going to do this, to do it safely, is going to look like this. We're going to keep the setting as before, but now we're going to query school year objects. That's using the manager from the school year model. We're going to filter for, we want to make sure that we get a school year for this particular user rather than just any school year, because that would be not the right thing to do. And I don't care what school year it is. As long as they have a school year, then they're fine. So, it is possible in this flow, and I don't have it possible today, but somewhere in the ultimate form of this site, they'll be able to go to a certain page, probably the courses page. I don't really know. I need to talk with my wife about where she would want to do it, because next school year, when she starts using this app, she's going to be able to need to create a school year. So it's conceivable that a person could ignore the onboarding, go to some of these other pages, find the place to create a school year, and create multiple school years for some reason. It doesn't really matter to me, but as long as they've proven that they know how to make a school year, they're good. So that's why I'm using first. And it tells me I'm using not actually using the school year, the user object correctly. So there we go. Let's get back to first. First says, give me the first instance you can find. It does have the possibility of returning none if there is no instance. So that gives us the behavior that we want. So it's either going to return a school year object, or it's going to return none. If it returns none, it's going to display the form that we want. If it returns a school year, it's going to display the happy text message that says, you've already done this, go on to the next step. So if we run the test now, the test should pass because we added a school year record. Conceivably, we could add a check, an assert that says that the context does not have a school year for this case, but I'm not particularly interested in that. What else could we check? For a validation point of view, I could also probably check that that the user does not have multiple school years. Like if I only want this onboarding to be for the first one, again, that seems excessive. You'd really have to go out of your way to create multiple school years to the view. It's possible, but I think it's pretty unlikely. But maybe I'll eat my words someday in the future. Okay, so got our test. The server is still running. So let's prove that it works. So it's showing us this page right now. And the reason it's doing that is if we go to the app area and check out school years, I've got two of them, in fact. One of them has the test data that I have been using for other purposes and has a lot of records. And one of them is this new school year that I created probably on the last stream. In fact, if I try to delete this one, it'll probably say there's basically nothing connected to it, unless I'm wrong. Oh, nope. So this is an import that I've done of all of the classwork. So I'm not going to delete these right now. I don't really need to. But it's proving that it's doing the right thing. No, you know what? Let's delete both of them. I do want to prove this. And this is just a data import, so it's not like I've lost anything of substance here. So we'll delete all this data. I guess that maybe the smarter way is I could have started a new account to prove this as well. But that's okay. We'll do this. I'm not destroying anything that really matters, just deleting test data. And now if we come back in here and we refresh, the form is there. So we can do this test end to end. Let's do that right now. So we'll say that our school starts on 9/1/20 and ends on 6/1/21, just like the placeholders suggested. And say create school year. And it's going to kick us to the grade level page, which is not going to be, it's still the wrong template. So ignore the fact that it looks like it kicked us backwards. Pay attention to the URL bar. It sent us to the right place. That's good news. And if we go back here, now it's saying, you created your school year. So let's fix that copy up now. Now that I'm seeing it in context, it doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't convey that this is already done. So we'll say you already created your school year. So now it feels appropriate to me. And that's this one. That's issue 69 that we just fixed. So let's check it out. There's 3 files that we touched. We added a test to check that the school year was in the context. We added that bit of context data using a query for the school year and picked any school year that's satisfactory. And then we updated the template to have an if check. And it checks for the state where there is a school year and moves them on to the next step, and the state where there isn't a school year, and it shows them the form that we created last time. So I'm going to commit that to source control, version control, git, and we'll say check for existing school year in school year onboarding page. And that fixes number 69. Okay. And I realize I might be going kind of fast if you're new to Django. If you feel like I am going too fast, please do pause me, ask me questions. I'm here to answer questions if I can. So if there's something that's confusing about what I did, sometimes I take for granted my amount of experience with Django. I'm here happy to pause and talk about some of these things in more depth if you need me to. And if not, we'll continue on. So the next thing I said we need, and maybe I put it in here. I did not. So we'll add it to the list of things to do for this page, is to check that a school year exists. This is going to get interesting in the template now, because The first step is just like, does the thing exist or not? And in this next step, eventually it'll be, does the school year exist? And if it does, you can proceed with this form and actually complete it or go back. But also, after it's done, after a grade level is created, we're going to have that state of it's time to move you to the next step. So it's got that one's going to have to do both directions. So we'll put in here, check that a school year exists, and I guess we also need to check that a grade level exists. That'll be the complete thing if we're considering all the paths. We'll start with the school year check because that's kind of the precondition. And then we'll actually do the form because otherwise we won't have a quick ability to make a grade level outside of the admin. And then we can add the final link that checks for the grade level. And we'll probably need a view to go to that other page eventually. I don't know that we'll get all that done today, but that's where we're at. Okay, so coming back to the view. I think what we need for the start grade level, well, first let's give ourselves a proper template. It is currently using the start view, and that's not right. So we'll change it to start grade level. We'll go to that page, and we'll get a template failure because this template doesn't exist yet. So we'll take that, and I will, wrong area. So we'll go back to the start school year. We'll come up to the directory, take start grade level, and save an empty file there. Now if I refresh, totally empty page. It's got nothing. Not what we want though. So it's at least is showing us the file is valid, even though the content's empty. And what do I want to say? The other bit has to do with the structure of the page. So go to this page, put it in here. I'll talk a bit about it. So now we're back to exactly the same point. I copied the same template that this was just pointing to a minute ago, just now in a different file. So it's a copy of the content. And I'm keeping this structure on purpose because if you remember from a previous stream, I talked about how I wanted the pages to like alternate between the images. We've got this nice friendly picture here. It's on the left side of the screen. On the next page, we've got this picture over here. It's on the right side. And I want to do left, right, left to kind of just give some visual interest to the eye. So this next page I want to have it's our right side version, which already has a certain amount of padding set up in the proper places. So we'll stick with that page. So we can maybe start by, I guess we can clear out the content for some stuff, like we don't need that button on this page. Keep the image for the moment because we're going to change that. So the button's gone, and we're going to change the banner. I already configured the banner. The start banner is an include fragment, and coming down here, here's the grade dash level. Is what I need to name it. And if I do that, should update to like pick the grade level spot. Let's see if there's anything else I need to update while we're in here. We've already got the URL appropriately, so that doesn't need to change. So I think that was it for that one. So let's do that. Good. Now it's showing grade level, and those things are linking appropriately. And You can't see the title. There you go. Here's the title. It says welcome to homeschool app right now. That needs to change. I think I've been making these so they just repeat what's in this banner. So we'll say create a grade level as the title of this page. So we'll change that right here. Create a grade level. And that's got that. Okay, so now let's go look for some stuff on, what is that site called where I got this from? Well, I don't remember. Shoot. It's a really great site too. I'm surprised I'm just drawing a blank on it. But it's on the Tailwind site if you're looking for it. Undraw. Again, the site's really cool. This person, Katerina Lipizzoni, put together a bunch of vector art that is not only is it searchable with Algolia, but it is also customizable, but you can change the color of the art so that it can align with what your stuff is. I'm going to search for school and see if there's something that feels good for this page. So the options are interesting. And it doesn't have to, I just searched for school just because it seemed like the obvious choice, but I suppose we could search for other things. Grade. I don't know. Teacher. That's grades. That's not the right kind of grades that I want. I'm not looking for like, this is your grade in the class. I'm looking for this is the grade level. As in first grade, second grade kind of stuff. If you're here in the States, which is where I am. So let's go back to the school search and see if one of those will work. I'm going to also turn off flux so I can see these things in the real colors. So this might be kind of good because if I think about what is a grade level, it's usually a group of students. And so that kind of conveys that feeling that there's multiple people there. And none of these other ones are really speaking to me specifically. So let's do this. Let's take this one. And so the first thing we're going to do is get the right color. The color, I never quite remember, is 2B6CB0. So 2B6CB0. There's our color. And we've got true friends. So I'm going to download this. There it is. And we'll start by opening it because that's going to open it in my image optim tool to make sure it clears out all the cruft that might be in there. So image optimization is a really cool tool on macOS that will clean up images and reduce file size. This has a super tiny amount of saving, so this SVG is already pretty compact. But if you have badly formatted JPEG or PNG images, saving bytes on the internet is hugely valuable for your website performance. So a tool like Image Optim is really great if you're handling assets kind of one at a time. Otherwise, there are other compression techniques that can take care of that in bulk, but for this kind of stuff where it's placeholders or images that are filling in a graphical experience like onboarding, and it's something that is likely going to be committed to your repository, then that's a good tool to have ready. have handy. So we're going to copy from downloads, undraw, and that was true friends. And we'll copy it to static files, and we'll call it, I'm going to just rename it to what it is representing here so that I know its association in the future. I'm going to call it SVG, grade level SVG, excuse me. So coming back to our template, we will change this to grade level, and we'll change the alt text. I don't know that there will be people that have visual impairment using this in the future, but in case there are, screen reader flexibility is a good thing. So we'll say 2 school friends chatting. I'm guessing they're chatting. They look like they're talking at each other. And that's all we're going to need from undraw today. We'll come back to it in another stream. And we don't need the color picker anymore. And if we refresh, very nice. That's lovely. I like, there's a bit of a theme. There's a bit of like red color that has been, well, I suppose it's a little bit more pink in this image. It's the same sort of pink here. So this is definitely a different person, whereas some more of an orange red, but it still is a nice color. Okay, so that's there. And now the next step. So what did I say we're going to do? We're going to check that there's a school year, right? So let's put that in the template. Let's say if school year, else. So the form is going to go in here. Form in here. And if there's not, this is when we're going to send back to school year page. Right? And we refresh, and you can see it's sending back to the school year page because we deleted, because we don't have the school year in the context yet. Okay, so now we are, I think we're ready to go with this view. Well, let's see, all of these are just paragraph tags with bottom padding of 4. Nothing we can't recreate. So let's delete that stuff. Empty the view out. Okay, time to come back to the views file. And we've got our start grade level. We also need the views test file. And this one is going to be, I don't think I've written any tests for this yet, so we'll start with those 2 views, which are needed for all of these. And I'm going to rename this test case to test start grade level, because that's the name of the grade level view. What do I call the other test case? Interesting. Whatever. I was just observing that one of these has view on the end. The tests have view on the end, but the actual, or this test does not have view on the end. Let's make this consistent. Where these are start view and start school year view. So let's have it be called start view and start school year view. Makes it very clear that's a view test. And let's change the school year attribute that's, or the school year text that's in here to grade level, because that's the name of the view. And if we run these 2 tests, they should pass, because they already have the structure that is required. They require the login. It requires the login mixin. Excuse me. The login required mixin is there. So the unauthenticated stuff will not work, or work as expected, I guess. And it points at a proper template so it can return a 200 response, which is what the second test checks for. But what did we say we care about? We now wanted to check, does the view have the context that we care about? So let's say test has school year, just like the other test. And in fact, it is the same test as up here. Except the difference being there is a different view to point at. Okay, so this will now fail. And we're going to come back here and we're going to copy the same stuff. I'm comfortable. Some people aren't comfortable copying stuff, but I think this is the most appropriate way to do this. I think it doesn't really make sense to me to factor that out into some method, because what is the method going to be? Get first school? I don't know. I feel like this is just as descriptive. So now we've got that test, or that method there. We run the test again, and it passes. Unsurprising. So now, if we come back to the actual page, so the context didn't have it, but we did complete this step. So this should actually say, yeah, the part where you want to put the form. But let's make sure we link back to the page that says you're not ready to start yet, basically, before we get too deep. And because that was like the first step on the checklist, right? Check that the school year exists. The implication of that is, okay, so it's really check that the school year exists and send back to school year page if it doesn't. That's really what we're doing here. So we can come in here and go, let's go back to the template. And we'll say, let's bring up the other template as well, the school year template, because it's going to be extremely similar. Oops, wrong section. No, that was the right section. So we're going to have the exact same look to this, where it's a green button, and it will say, well, what do I want that text to say? Create school year. And now we can say, before you can create a grade level, you must create a school year. And so we can see it. I'm just going to put a not here for a second. Otherwise it won't appear. So before you can create a grade level, you must create a school year. The other thing I noticed is that we copied this from the other template, so that I have the margin way indented here, although it's hard to tell. But you can see on this page that I'm really keeping the margin. There's no margin on this column, but it's like flush up here. And I think I want to make sure that that is replicated on this as well. Let's delete the margin left. And I think this copy is going to be temporary. I'm not super satisfied with it, but it is accurate right now. It's just not very friendly. It's very terse. But we're more interested in checking out, does this thing take us back? Okay. So we have the ability to advance. If we advance too far, then we have the ability to go back. So that feels good. Okay. One little extra bit that I'm not so sure about is like logically on the form, when I had just like this was the actual form content, I chose a blue button color because that's what all of my forms on the site will have by default. But then I did say that I wanted these green buttons to kind of advance. But in this scenario where you're actually ahead, the green maybe feels wrong. Like or well, does it? One argument I could have would be the green is like, hey, here's the thing that you actually need to do to actually make progress. So go over here. So that is kind of hinting at that. I could also see an argument that says like, you're not making progress, so this should be blue because like just something you should do. But I don't know. The splash of color is nice. We've got red, green, blue here, RGB. We've got it all. So I'll keep it for now. If I change my mind later, I change my mind. So let's take out the not, because we've now seen that that works as the way we'd expect. So coming back to our issue, what do we check? We want to check, yeah, we want to check that. Next thing we'll do is we will go ahead and put in the case where you already have a grade level so that we can advance you to the next step. And then we'll probably stop, frankly, and I don't want to start up the whole form before at this stage. So coming back to the view, we're back to our view stuff. Got the view, and we've got the test for the view. So we want to say that we want to check that it has the grade level in the context. And it's basically the same test, except school year now becomes grade level. And this factory is not right anymore. It now needs to be grade level factory. And instead of school, we have to get it from the school year. So we're going to use the factory syntax to say that we're going to create a grade level, and when it creates its school year from the factory, it will use the user's school as a school attribute. That way, this is just wiring the user and the grade level together. That test should still fail, though, at the moment, because it's a key error. So we need to come in here and take this same chunk of code. It's the same exact concept, except now we're going to call it grade level, and change this to grade level, which we have not imported yet. So we need to get that from schools, I believe. Okay, and when it does that query, it needs to do a join through the school year table to get it. And again, I don't care which grade level it is, as long as the user has created at least one, that is sufficient for the test. And now the test passes. I think the other thing that might be worth adding in this context is there is logic that happens when these things are none. So do we write? Okay, I'm trying to think of if I want to add these or not to even check if the case when it's none. I don't know that's worthwhile. It is exercising technically a different if check that, but it's kind of gonna go. It's gonna go unasserted. So I could do, for instance, I'll just show what I was gonna do. Perhaps I could say assert context, and then I could say school year none. So this is what happens when there isn't one, and it was true. So it just meant that the school year was in the context, but it was in there with a value of none. So there was a key defined, but it just didn't have anything. But I think that's offering pretty limited utility, so I'm going to delete it. So now we have our check for if you have a grade level. So here comes the question about where to put this in the template. So let's go back to the template. And where should this go? There's an argument to say that you could do something like this. I don't think this is right. We could do this in an elif branch. Elif, there's a grade level. Maybe we should. I don't know. Let me think on this for a second. Because if I think about the way the data is structured, this is why I'm tripping up on this part. If there's a grade level, because of the way the data is modeled, there must be a school year. Okay? So actually, that alone proves to me that I cannot do what I was about to do. This elif is actually wrong. Because if there is a grade level, it means it must point to a school year. And since the query in the context also looks for give me any school year, this chunk right here would never execute properly because the school year would always happen first, and then it would just never do the grade level. I could probably, however, invert these. So I could do if there's a grade level, elif there's a school year, because we're getting from most specific to least specific. And that might actually be the right thing to do. Because it's sort of like falling through of how far have you advanced through the process. You've either not done anything, and so you still need to go back and do that thing, or you're at the step where you've already, or you need to do it right now. That's when the form needs to be displayed, which should be in this middle step. Or you're in the future and you've already created a grade level, in which case, don't do that. And so these, by having it in these three, I think that captures it. And it goes down from most specific amount of data to not enough data, and then the not enough data is down here, and too much data is up here. So, and then the form is in the middle. I think that flows the way I want it to flow. So let's copy the same chunk and say, well, what did I say last time on that other one? Let's just reuse the same stuff at the moment. Because my creativity is diminishing rapidly. So you've already created your first grade level. The next step is to create a course. And I'll just end it this time. A little bit more terse. And so we can see it. Let's do this. Say not grade level. We got to change the text of the button to say what? Create a grade level? No. Add a course to your grade. Or just add a course. I added the to your grade part just so that it would have something to flow to the next line, because it looked super weird when there was only one line's worth of text. But in terms of a button, the button would be too big, I think, if I had all of that text. And so that looks good. And let's point it at the proper view, but this will break. So I change this to course. That doesn't exist yet, so this will blow up. Yep. So we're gonna finish that off. We'll create the view quickly. We'll update the banner to point to the proper link, and then we'll wrap things up for the night. Because I think that'll be a good stopping point. Okay, so let's go back to the views file, create the next view, and I'm going to call it start course view. For the moment, I'll let it have the same template so that it will work to something. And now we need to connect it in the URLs. Come over to the start URLs, and we will say copy this. And I'm doing these I'm not like alphabetically sorting these or anything. I'm putting them in the order that they will occur. So I think that is logically useful. We'll say start course view, and we got to change the URL name to start course. So that should work now. It does. And if we click it, it's the same template as what we just saw. So it didn't look like much change, but pay attention to the URL bar, and you'll see that it changed to course. So the other bit that we need to do is change the banner now that we have a course URL available. So this becomes, instead of start school year, it becomes start course. Okay. And refreshing the page, it's taking a second to load for some reason. There it goes. If we look at the links, we've got start school year. This is not linkable because it's the page we're on. And this is now start course. So that's what we want. So I think that gets us to where we want to be for the night. We talked about some of the validation that I added to the school year form that I was not able to cover in the stream. You didn't get to see that fully implemented, but you got to see a little bit of flavor of that. And we basically have been plugging the holes for logically, like how could people really mess up this application if they were to go back and create more schools, go forward and do steps that they're not able to do yet. So I think that brings us to where I want to end the stream tonight. The next time I stream, we'll probably continue on these forms. And if you didn't catch the form creation the first time around, you can see how I do it for a grade level. The grade level is about the simplest form that we could possibly create. It is something that will have a name. I think that's all that's in there. It's got a name, and the foreign key is going to be something that we will populate as a hidden field to the form, so it can do the right thing. And that's it, which is nice. So if you are new to forms, it might be a good experience to learn how to do that. And I can walk through how that stuff gets tested, how you do posts to your inside of your test to check out the data, make sure that it redirects to the proper places, and so on. If you want to catch more about this, maybe you joined in later, didn't catch the beginning, and have other things you want to check on, I will post this up on YouTube. I put all the recordings up there. There's a playlist of now 50 some odd streams that are available. So there's tons you can learn. You can see my old application that we were working on before of this one, for some more advanced topics. That app was a little farther along, so covered some stuff related to deployment. To finish it off, I guess we have there are a few ways to follow me. I'm on Twitter as MB Layman. You can send me a message there, or at message me and reply to me, and I'll try to answer questions. And as a reminder, if you want to get connected and have deeper, longer questions, there's a Discord that you can check out below. Other than that, I think that's going to wrap it up for the evening. Thank you for joining in. Have a good night. Take care.